Alrighty, we'll kick back in. Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing on our annual plan workshop. We'll pass back to Andrea.
So we've flicked over pages now, so the one with the yellow highlighting at the top. Just a item to note, to let you know the process that we're currently going through. So this here is purely very, very high level. It is based on the long-term plan that we adopted last year. What SLT are currently doing with budget holders is we are meeting, myself, Nigel, and Rita, who's helping out with the process, and Tyler, plus some governance, are actually meeting with all of them on a one-on-one basis and going through their annual plan, their forecast, and actually interrogating them. So that started yesterday, so it was a whole day yesterday. Tomorrow is another 3/4 of a day. Thursday, I think, is another half a day. And then on Friday, SLT will meet at Seabay and go through the outcomes of all of the individual meetings and see where we land. So that may or may not deviate from the long-term plan numbers that we've got in front of us, but until such time we've done that exercise, then we won't know. So from a high level, based on LTP, like I said earlier, in theory, year 2 of the LTP is what we should be carrying forward as our budget for next year. This one in front of you is essentially taking the long-term plan year 2 at the 12% on average rates increase, adjusting for some known adjustments, being the carried forward subsidies that we're not going to receive this year, making the assumption that we will get them still next year. We've had a change in the depreciation and a change in the finance interest expenses, and that's where we will land at a 12% increase of rates, so showing as an $8 million surplus. The other 3 columns are, well, okay, keeping everything the same and only increasing rates 5%, 8% and 10%. So you can see that by keeping all of this the same, then we would end up with a surplus of about $2.3 million if we drop to 5% rates. But as Mr. Booth has pointed out, that actually if you took off your capital subsidies, then we would be showing as a deficit. So open the floor for comments. Questions?
Andrew, my only comment was a question is, just before you talked about your process you're going through, which is awesome. But I would hate to think that SLT or whoever are concerned about deviating away from the LTP and all of that, because that's all we get in our reports. All the reports we got today was if we do this, it deviates away. But we're getting serious now, so if it deviates away and we have to make fundamental changes, then I'm sorry, but that is what we're here to do. We are accountable to the ratepayer.
That's what our workshop is about.
Yes.
With staff, is to actually say, this is what it currently looks like. Now, what are all your ideas to save money? And is there anything that's missing? Okay? Those will then come to council to say, here's a list. Do you want to do these things or not? And some of those will be contentious and some of them will be straightforward.
We're not doing this the wrong way around. Are we not best to say, this is how much money you've got, go away and do it?
I asked that question yesterday. So currently the way this system works is you do up your costs and then your rates with a 15% meets all of those costs, and then corporate ends up with a deficit or a surplus. So I did ask that. That's the way the system works at the moment. So if you got your rates and you put on 5%, this is what that's doing, but the cost structure for your day-to-day is exceeding that, so it's a bit tricky.
The problem with that is, because I tend to agree, but then it's the level of detail that we need to miss, and we need to work out how we can understand what's not going to happen anymore. Because it's all very well and good saying, right, we're only putting up rates 5%, go work it out. And then it kind of becomes obvious to us through the year. It's like, why aren't you doing this? Well, we took that out of the budget. Why aren't you doing this? So I'm okay with that approach, so long as we are fully aware
Yeah.
of what will not happen anymore.
And that's why we want to
Yeah.
bring those to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Because at the moment, these scenarios, whether good, bad or ugly, are saying, doing what we're doing now, this is what it might look like. And obviously with the 5%, it's showing a surplus of 2.3, but it's again because those subsidies that come across. So if you pull the subsidies out, we'll be back in deficit, but that's why you've got to start working on how do we pull that back.
And the other side of it is we've still got to be realistic. Like I note, you know, in this that there's no change to personnel costs, which will please Councillor Booth, but is that actually realistic?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, yep, okay.
So if you take the reforecast of the personnel cost to 3921, then so you're just assuming a 12% increase on that. So that's basically the maths at this stage, eh? So it's not taking into effect you've got an agreed increase with the union of X, and then you've got your parks increases of staff of 20. So so we need to get into that level of detail, don't we? Yeah. Okay.
So, like I say, so there is work happening around all of those areas. This was just as a guideline to see what it might look like. There's a workshop on Tuesday, the 25th, so next Tuesday, where there'll be a bit more detail. The activity managers will be here. So from all the work that we do this week and Friday, we'll then feed that information back for that workshop on the 25th, which is where they'll talk levels of service. We'll talk, well, okay, if we do this, we could make these savings, or X, Y, Z over here, we could do this, and that kind of thing. So this is sort of just as a, like I say, hey, potentially we could do it, but we would need to do X, Y, Z. Because here, for example, the other expenses are 58,146,000. We're forecasting at the end of this year to be 50,100,000. So to continue the business but only grow our other expenses 46 means that we need to make savings somewhere, because there'll be cost escalations in other areas. So it then comes down to, well, okay, what do we have to do to potentially keep it at 58 million? What does that look like? How are we going to go about doing that?
And can there be a bit of an emphasis also on that? I don't think we just want it to be, in order to do this, what do we need to cut out? I think we need to be looking at this from a whole approach of, we need to do business differently. Not just what can we cancel, what do we need to change about how we do business, about what we do out there. And I know it's been brushed over when I've mentioned it before and not taken seriously, but that even means looking at some of our largest infrastructure expensive stuff, you know, like our roads and our footpaths. And I've said it before, that I'm still not convinced that a whole street needs to be done because it's been programmed to be done. That, for example, like the main highways with their pothole gangs, why aren't we doing that? Down our footpaths and streets, why aren't we, you know, just considering different ways of doing things that are going to be cheaper to do, that maybe for the next 3 years we don't replace any footpaths, we just repair them, if that's cheaper to do, for example. So I want to see plans for what can we do differently that's going to save a lot of money, that's going to get us through the next 3 years. That's some of the stuff that I want to see.
So I agree with that, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to have that conversation. The three areas that I think inside here will move the most will be roading, because we've still got the NZTA at 6.4 and 5. Now we need to look at that and go, is that real? And if it isn't real, then that'll drop and that'll erode that surplus going across those three different scenarios, or four scenarios. And what does that do to our expenses? Anything or not? There'll be some, obviously, parks. There'll be some sort of movement in there, but it should be neutral. It's just the categorisation of where you're putting stuff. And the other one is waste, I think, needs a bit of a look around in terms of the levies and so forth. But the rest of it, we should be able to get this knocked out pretty well.
Scotty, I was going to say, it might be really good to actually, and I'm being serious now, spend some time with the guys, the contractors and that, when they're doing these things. So when you repair footpaths, you know, the establishment and, dare I say, traffic management and everything, there's a whole bigger picture there. So when you start doing footpaths, you take the opportunity to do all the infrastructure. So everywhere around Timaru, there's a massive amount of old ceramic pipes for stormwater. So straight away they factor in that they're going to put in the new, which is a galvanised thing. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff just to see how these things can be done without just repairing a small bit and all that sort of thing.
Absolutely, but every time they replace a footpath, they do not replace all the infrastructure, not every time.
Yeah, but you've got to be careful there the way we fund things as well, and just take that into account, because when we do a renewal, that's actually capital funded and it's funded from depreciation. If you don't do that renewal and you basically go into maintenance, you just do patches here and there, then that's operating cost. That comes straight out of your rates. So you can, it can be false economy.
I do know this, and that's been explained to me before. I'm challenging you, rather than to say, no, it doesn't work because of this, I'm challenging you to look at, is there another way to do this? Rather than just cancelling things, because otherwise you're going to look at your budget now and say, we just can't afford to do that anymore. It's like, no, we're not saying don't do it. How can we address this at a lower cost? Don't brush Scotty aside because I just don't agree with him.
Well, I guess, can I just point out another thing is too, that roading costs in particular are benchmarked throughout New Zealand, and we are at the bottom. We are one of the lowest operating of provincial councils. So, we are very efficient.
I still feel like you're not getting my point.
Yeah, I do get it, and there is other ways. And we're always looking for innovative ways of doing things. We have tried a lot of things that hasn't been tried before nationally. We are a leader.
And also there's another warning on these numbers. There's going to have to be transition costs for water, one way or the other.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing to note is that Smithfield is not included in this.
It isn't, but Smithfield will be one on the list to say there's 1.2 million of waste costs. Here are some options of how we can either recover that or we have to find it somewhere else.
So without diving too deep into waste, that's one where we always seem out, Andrew, where we're not getting the right return or the numbers out. How can we go about ensuring the numbers solid,
Well, in regard to waste, the numbers are actually pretty good this year. We're running, at a break-even point. There's no budget blowouts at all, and they're maintaining their budgets even with the capital side of things. So I think we've got waste right now. Yeah, well, there was that year previously that wasn't adequately funded.
On that waste, are we saving enough for a new dump in 30 years' time? No. So, they're the kind of things that I think we need to understand, because when we talk about waste and we ask the question, do we make money out of taking everybody else's waste? And you say yes. It doesn't give me a lot of reassurance. I think we need to understand how that all works, because yes, it might be short term we might benefit from taking everybody else's waste, but what about the long term? What's going to happen? Because we're just filling up our dump faster. And that is a concern. So it would be good, and I've suggested to the CE before, if at some point, probably not before we do this annual plan, but if at some point we have a workshop on waste, so we really understand what happens down there, how the levies work, how that funding back works, what we get back, and just have a really good deep dive into it, because it is a question that comes up every single time we get finances, and I still don't understand it.
I guess my other concern is around some of our assets, our vertical builds in terms of earthquake-prone maintenance. If you look at the building across the road, you wouldn't have your house with rotted windowsills like that, and that's an asset of ours. So while we're driving to reduce costs, I also want to make sure we are doing the things we should be, by putting the roof, if it's been leaking for 6 years. We need to know those things, so there's, as well as budgets, there's, I guess, having a holistic look at the assets we own and making sure they're in good shape.
For me, it keeps coming back to the same old thing that I keep bringing up, and the fact that our personnel charge costs have gone from 14 million in 2017 up to, someone mentioned 39 before, that is out of kilter, and that we were doing everything back then, and that was without consultants or lawyers. So in actual fact, we've got rid of the lawyers by the sound of it, which is good. But saying that, those numbers have got right out of whack, and we need to actually just set a budget there, and everyone has to work within it somehow. That is a huge increase, and that is where all the money's going. The other stuff that you're talking about is like trying to have a fundraiser with a hot dog stand.
As long as they've got good sticks, councillor Booth, you'll be right.
Like more hot dogs than others too.
I think to satisfy your need, one of the things we don't count in this organisation is FTEs. Because while it might have gone from 14 to 34, it'd be interesting to see what the FTEs have done. And what I mean by that is full-time equivalents. Now, when I go to HR to say, can I have the full-time equivalents, you've got to go and try and count them up. So, yeah.
But there's even danger in that, because I can straight away see what councillor Booth's going to say, and the answer might be we've gone from 150 to 300. For what, but there might be reasons for that, like bringing parks in-house. So it's kind of understanding the reason behind that growth as well, if there is one.
Offset by lower contractor rates, so that should offset it.
Correct, but you're only looking at the personnel cost. You're not looking at the other side of it.
We're basically going to be 4 million down on our, by the sound of, on the this year actual. You're sort of suggesting we're going to be at 30 million for personnel charges against 34?
Forecast set.
To be fair, there was also a note beside that forecast that once we get through the seasonal period, it will be looked at again. Because the seasonal period, it's quite hard to, sometimes, you might employ somebody on a seasonal basis and they're doing five hours a week, but actually reality, they're doing 20 hours a week. So those kind of things, until that seasonal period rolls through, the personnel will be looked at closely in March.
As I say, the majority of our rates increases are going towards personnel charges.
I'm not convinced, but that's all right. We all do maths a little bit differently. But I think your point is right in the fact that we should have a strong focus on it. And I think that's the opportunity that, when we're talking about all these other things that are topical in the theatres and the stadiums and all that, when it comes to signing off budgets, we actually spend some time talking about personnel costs. What are the new FTEs budgeted in? What are the commitments we have within contracts, etc.? And throw a ruler over it. And parks, of course, as far as new FTEs as well.
So on a P&L, one of the biggest ones is depreciation. That will be outstripping personnel in terms of growth. So, that's a big one.
We always focus on the negative, and rightly so, because we want to make improvement. But, there are some things that we have addressed in the last few years yes, we're unbudgeted, but we have focused on depreciation and some of those things that did need to be corrected. So we're still on a better pathway than a lot of councils. Now, we didn't get the proper opportunity for the long-term plan to really look at costs. We're doing that now. I think it's going to roll over to the next year as well, because we're not going to get everything achieved that we want to as far as delivering some of the services, moving away from parks, some of the other things, in-house, or what we're going to at least look at. So it's still going to be probably an 18-month, probably up to mid-26 for the council. We'll just say the council. But we will achieve a bit in this budget process, so, yeah.
Can I just want to sort of leave. If you want to get to a balanced budget, the 12% was correct. Because if you look at this piece of paper, it's saying we're 8 million surplus with a 12% increase. However, we drag forward 12 million of subsidies. Now, if you didn't drag those forward, you'd be bang on your LTP, which was a deficit. So that's telling us that actually we've got work to do. Now, you can go in, because we've dragged those forward, you can go in lower in the 25-26 year because your P&L will break even, but you're just kicking the can down the road a little bit in terms of getting back to a balanced budget. And it may be the appropriate thing to do because there's work needed to get it there.
That's without all the savings you're going to deliver, Nigel.
Just an item to note, under the subsidies and grants, that's a combination of operational and capital. So it's not that we have to have a $25 million profit, because there's a combination in there. It's only half of those are capital grants.
There's still 9.
Yeah.
Take it off the 8, you break even.
Do we have any other comments? No. This was just to give you just an overview. Like I say, a heads up. I've budgeted the interest rate at 4.75%. So it's probably still a little bit high, but
Sorry, I know we just had this report, but can you just remind me how much of that is?
4.14%.
Yeah, but how much of that's on floating? So what is the risk there to that 4.75? Feels safe to me.
there's not a lot of floating.
Yeah. Be pretty confident about that 4.75.
Yeah.
In the
And we've still
income-
got the interest rate swaps that are still further out that will then,
charging TDHL so that once they get their own facility, they'll pay us our money back or something.
I don't know, was that discussed? Did they indicate they were going to?
Fraser just said to me, do you want us to pay this back? And I said, I'm relaxed about it because we're clipping the ticket.
Yeah, we're actually making on the deal at the moment.
Question for governance councillors. With the percentages in front of us here, 5, 8 or 10 or 12, where's your feeling? Where do you want us to head?
Look, I think before I appreciate the question, but I actually think we're too early for that, because we have to make the right decisions based on costs, etc. So I love seeing the rate percentages, and I think we all know where we want to get to, which is probably under 10 somewhere. But let's do the right thing and work through costs, revenue, what we need to achieve for the community, and then get to there. Yeah.
I think we need to hear
Yeah.
the officers before we can put a percentage on it, because otherwise the work that they're doing is nil and void because we're not listening to that. We're just looking at a number.
So it's good to get that feedback, because there's obviously a feel in the room that 12 is not going to hit the mark and lower is, so then we can adjust our conversations and our budgets and looking at how we increase income and still aim for something a little bit lower than 12. Yeah.
to know what a balanced budget actually number percentage increase would look like on the knocker.
I don't think you want to know.
Well, what you'll be getting back is there are a lot of fees that need to go up, and we're going to have to get those signed off, and the cost. You'll all get a text from the nation. The cost structures that are in here, I think that when we've been through this with our budget managers, they'll still be similar. And then after that, we've got to look at, okay, what are the things that we would do to actually bring that down? And really, the only people that can make that call as to whether we hit go or not is you. Okay?
I'd be pretty disappointed if we came back and said, we've really looked at our costs and we can't reduce them. Because, and this is the smallest of examples, but when we talked about the fleet management, we talked about having GPS in all of those vehicles, it costs us 60 grand. My view is we don't need that. Take it out. There's other ways to manage health and safety, and that's just one tiny little example. So I would be very disappointed if our management team came back and said, we've looked, we can't save any money.
You're not saying that. I'm saying their budgets will be similar, and then we'll give you a list of these are the things that we are looking at doing to pull it back.
To pick on you, Mr. Dixon, but that's just an example that comes to mind. There's other ways than 60 grand. Perfect. Yay.
Really, if there's
Yep. Is that saving in here? Not you. Oh, good. Yeah, it's not, yeah. Okay, thanks, good conversation. Appreciate all the work that's gone on behind this. So thanks for all that team, and look forward to continuing it. But it's not just about, it's not about hitting a number. It's not about 12%. If it has to be 12% or 10% or whatever it is, that is the number that we need to take to the community or decide on. But when we arrive on that, as an SLT, senior leadership team, as a governance team, CE, we all need to agree that we've done everything we can to be as efficient as possible, with the goal to delivering, in my view, a high-performing organisation for our ratepayer shareholder. Simple as that. So we've done everything and achieved those goals, then yes, that's the number that we need to. But let's do all the work behind the scenes before we talk about the yellow. Alrighty, thanks so much, and thank you for listening online.
Very good.